everyone. Today we have our another new episode. This episode is very important because we have a debate. There is a very good debate around the world that some of the scholars they said university education should be free, and there are many corporate persons and the scholar they also believe that university education should not be free. We have our world famous speakers, Professor Rob, Professor David Smith, Professor in practice, Professor Marshall, and Professor Donald. So there is a government. Governments actually already as a prime ministers will lead the government side, Professor Rob, and the minister of education will be Professor Donald. On the other hand, we have opposition leaders, opposition leader Professor David Smith, and opposition's whip will be Professor Marshall. So this debate is very important because we will discuss and we will do debate on university educations. Even for the developing world, this is very important. I'm from a private university. Long-term country like Bangladesh, they have a lot of public university, but after 90s, they started this private university concept. They are following USA concept, and step by step now, I believe there are more than 100 private university. So private university definitely we have to pay. On the other hand, there are public university. Yes, I also go for the public university. Public university, we do not have to pay. Like naturally, government pays subsidy to the public university. This is new world, new norms, new concepts. I am sure from this debate we will learn many interesting things. So now I request Honorable Prime Minister of the Parliament, Professor Rob.
Thank you and good morning. Free education isn't something that I advise or recommend easily. It comes with a cost, and it's not inexpensive. But I'm going to argue that the cost of not assuring our people are properly educated is greater than the cost of assuring it. And let me walk you through why. We're in the middle of what a lot of folks call the fourth industrial revolution. That means we're going to need a whole bunch of skills we don't have. Currently, we're not really competitive in science and technology. We're being beset by a pandemic, and we're not competitive with regard to our ability to develop remedies. And we've certainly seen that the developed countries have been taking an inordinate amount of the antivirus medications. And the only way to get around that, I mean, and honestly, I can't blame them. You're supposed to take your citizens as a priority, and just as we're supposed to take our citizens as a priority. But the fix for that is to develop the capability in country. But if we don't have the skills to develop it in country, we can't address the problem. And it's only one of a number of problems we're going to be facing. We're going to be facing a change in how people generate electricity. We're going to face a change in food tied to global warming. We're going to be facing a change in how we build buildings after natural disasters. These are all things that we have to be prepared to do, but we lack the skills and capabilities to do them. Now, what I'm not suggesting is we just open up the doors and provide massive amounts of money for people to study anything. If you're being paid by the state to learn something, then the benefit has to go back to the state. So what I'm proposing is free education for those skills that we lack and we don't have. But that's only part of the problem. The other part of the problem was we don't have the industry to employ those skills. So if we were just to focus on funding skills alone, we would have a bunch of people that would then go to other countries to earn their living, and that can't be right either. The country doesn't get the benefit that it's funding. And so part and parcel to this is a partnership with industry. And that partnership not only includes help in funding the people that they need to grow their own business, but also government funding to create those businesses to begin with. This is a soup to nuts proposal. What we need to develop the skills to develop the industries, but we also need to develop the industries to consume the skills. Doing half won't solve the problem. It'll just create another problem of folks exiting the country to get the jobs that we've trained them to do. So what I'm proposing is a combination of industry and government funds, industry and government efforts to create a comprehensive education system that also includes the creation of the industries we need to prepare the country for the future. This is a multi-year project, and there certainly needs to be assurances. The opposition clearly is going to argue against this proposal And if they come into power, they very well could kill it. So we do need to make sure that this proposal is, one, self-perpetuating as much as possible, and number two, the people that we're training are protected at least through their training so they can complete their education at the very least, and then hopefully still find a job in the industry, in the industries that we want. Now, the kinds of industries that we're talking about that we need are medical. We need a lot of medical help. We need a ton of engineers, both electrical engineers and software engineers. We need to start developing a basis in data science. Artificial intelligence is coming, and every model that we've presented in the past and shown has showcased that countries that don't have the capability in artificial intelligence will fall well behind the countries that do. These are all things that we need to bring up to speed and make viable. So the government's proposal is a focused education program combined with industry, where the students go through and they not only learn how to do the jobs we need them to learn, but they also are working in conjunction with other students to build the industries they will eventually work in. So it's a combined education with pure education and on-the-job training, so that when they come out of the process, they are prepared to do the work that we need them to do. And it comes with some caveats. If they go through the program and they're funded in the program, then they have to agree to work in country for a certain number of years. We're proposing 5 years at the very minimum in order to create the industry we need and hopefully create an environment where they want to stay and they don't want to leave. Because once again, if we don't do that, if we don't close that door, we're just educating a bunch of people that will then leave the country to do the things we need them to do here. So it has to be comprehensive, and we need both sides of the aisle to participate, because this is not something that one party or the other can do alone. We need a comprehensive program, but it's for the good of the country, for the sustainability of the country, and to assure that our children have a country to live in, much like we do.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister of the Parliament, for your excellent proposal. Perhaps this is a very good strategy for the developing world, why the higher education, like university education, should be free, especially we live in Industry 4.0, so there are many skill sets we have to develop. I am sure the different corporations and academy, they can follow this model. This is very good case study, and definitely we will get a very good and strong case study from the opposition side. Now I request Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Professor David Smith.
Well, Prime Minister, thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to be part of this debate. The principles that the majority leader laid on the table are all valid principles, because the world has changed and we have this going on. The worldwide pandemic with COVID actually has taught us the principle that education has to change, particularly higher education. Higher education has not changed much since the time of Socrates, but yet our world continues to change and evolve. And it even takes us back to some of the principles of that age that I believe are coming back into focus today. If you go back to that time, you had places where trades were important. You had places where you had people doing a wide variety. The concept of scientific research then was very separate and valued. If we do go to a concept of free education for all, university education for all for free, and you begin to see those, you see that it will change how we look at higher education. I will tell you, I remember back being in a free public school system, and I always was frustrated because students in my classes didn't want to be there. They didn't want to learn, but they were there because it was free. If you begin to look at some of the other countries where they have free public education right now, and what that does, you see some of the same arguments coming out of the countries where they have free education today, that sometimes people go for the wrong reasons, and free education begins to drive that. And even though we think it's a right, I agree that some form of education and some form of education after secondary should be available there. But if I look at technology today, I will tell you, most of my programmers, I'd rather hire them out of boot camps and other things than a university or college education. In fact, let me just give you a real interesting thing. Uh, One of the senior vice presidents of Google, he's the senior vice president of operations at Google, said, one of the things we see from all of our data crunching is that GPAs are worthless as criteria for hiring, and test scores are worthless. He says, even more fascinating is his statement that the proportion of people without a college education has increased over time, leading to teams where over 14, 15% have not gone to college. And he says that is a trend we're going to see going because in today's education for the basic college degree, it's not preparing people against it. And then let me talk about some of the other elements on this. Again, looking globally at the 9 countries who do free college education a day, one of the things they've seen is that the opposition says free college looks like it's leveling the playing field. In those places, looking at the studies, it's not, because it will further drive inequality due to the wealth concentration of the top percentage of society. Students that belong to this status will avail themselves of free college too. And since this group, because of their standing as advanced in terms of basic education, it's going to widen the earning gap. It's going to strengthen social inequality. And a free college program would be regressive because students from poor families are less likely to attend college while their wealthier peers can choose to study in whatever university they want to for free. Also, free college will negatively affect the quality of education. You know, you're cutting spending in other areas. So education and research and development will dramatically decrease. You know, if I look, having been in academia, the money we get from tuition and things is used to support supplemental programs. It's used to buy the advanced labs. It's being used to bring teams of highly qualified researchers together to drive advancements in science, devise advancements that a research university. If I look in Germany where college education is free, what you've seen there is their great research universities have suffered because of the free education. And Germany's actually changing their approach right now to bring more tuition money and more outside money into research universities to begin to regain that capability back into the colleges and the universities because society thrives on the research out of research universities. Um, you begin to see other things. Free college really does not ensure high completion rates. You know, already you see that things that the tuition rates is completion rates not as high as it can go. However, if you look at again in the countries where it has it, you have places where the completion rates are not high. In fact, in Denmark, which one of the majority parties loves to cite, these type of students are referred to as eternity students. They're students who stay in college for 6, 10, 12 years without ever getting a program. You know, and having free education affords these students the ability to continue transfer from one program to another. In contrast, though, what they found is paying college students show a greater ability to study and finish a program and then in out and making contributions to society. Uh, Other type of things, you know, is you look at the quality of faculty. Free college would not lead to a well-educated workforce. You begin to look at the infusion of the money may benefit students by lessening the financial burden, but it really does not ensure quality at the levels that you see as we talked about before, particularly how you're doing it. But you begin to see some other places where uh, you see that the college educations really have it. Finally, again, looking at studies that have been done where there are places where free colleges have in existence. Free college is not directly linked to economic growth. Well, education is a key driver of economic development, and you've heard me say that time and time. Uh, but education raises where you increase the creativity, the innovation, the productivity, requires substantial investments in institutions. And since all colleges will be free, all universities will free, we cannot afford to put that same type of money into all those institutions to have a level playing field. And if you can't do that, you're going to see the link to economic growth competing there. And, quite honestly, the government has many competing priorities, and free college requires extremely high education subsidiaries. And it really presents a high probability of failure in the long run. And finally, there was a study in 2020 published by the American Education Research Association that reveals that the effective use of resources for free colleges probably goes the other way. They say that it reduces the cost for low ones, but it creates eligibility requirements, and that any free college, free university that maintains inequality is going to have waiting lists, well long ones. I can tell you, some of the universities that I lecture at have long waiting lists. For example, here in Austin at the University of Texas, we have waiting lists to get into our business school, into our computer science program, into our science programs. And you will see that even more if you take free college university and make it on a universal level. So, Prime Minister, that's my basic start of the arguments against the majority party, but be more than happy to continue this debate. And you're muted.
Thank you, Honorable Opposition Leader of the Parliament, for your excellent strategy, especially how it creates some problem if we give 100% free education for university. I'm sure our Honorable Ministers, Education Minister of the Parliament, he has some different opinions and view. And we know that he is a expert from European Unions, basically from USA. He is taking care of European Union, so he can give his views based on the model of Scandinavian country. Professor Donald.
Hi. Well, it's interesting listening to the views of my colleagues and fellow ministers. I think that we have to look at this from a kind of a bigger picture and ask the question about what we really mean by free education and public education. And just to sort this out right in the beginning, I'd like to point out that the University of California provides about $86 billion a year to the California economy at the very least. It's 3.4, it's a huge driver of our economy, and the two of the universities in the UC system are in the top 20 universities in the world. UC Berkeley is rated at U.S. News and World Report as, 3 or 4, one of the top universities in the world. It's the only one that's above it is Harvard, Stanford, and MIT. So it's number 4. And for certain subjects, UC is actually considered the top. I mean, when you look at universities, usually it's apples and oranges because they're experts at one thing and not necessarily expert at something else. UC Berkeley Engineering Department is the one that you want to go to if you want to be a top engineer. But UC isn't free. It actually has a very high tuition. It was practically free when I went there. And in the Constitution of California, it's supposed to be free, but somehow that got perverted. And where I'd like to go with that is that free, if a university's free, what makes it free? So if it's a state university, in all cases, people need to pay their tuition, buy their books, eat, and live. So interestingly enough, some of the private universities like Stanford, Yale, Harvard, and so on, if you're low income, they'll pay everything for you. So for top students, they can go to Johns Hopkins. Any of these top schools will basically, if you get in, they'll arrange for you to get financial aid so that you can go through the school. So that's one sense of being free, is that you don't have to pay. And that works with private universities and public universities. So when you look at the spectrum of universities, I definitely believe that everybody should be able to get a university education, but it's also something that's kind of complicated because a lot of the there's many private universities that are just scams, like Trump University, where he actually it was a scam. He got sued and lost the suit, had to pay everybody their money back. And so just willy-nilly providing funds for any university isn't exactly what we want to do. We want to make sure that the universities are good, solid universities that help support. Now, Rob pointed out, and it's something that I slightly have a different take than my colleague, which is that I don't think when we're making public universities, they shouldn't necessarily be they shouldn't be job training. I mean, they can be job training, but I think that's a mistake. And I'd like to point out that Steve Jobs was a calligraphy major at Reed. Reed is one of the most liberal, most out there colleges in the country. I know his roommate there at Reed, my friend Dan Kotke. And Elon Musk was economics major, which, might tie into business, but not necessarily. My niece is an economics major who does modeling for a nonprofit organization, economics. It's not necessarily something that's going to help you with business. It's pretty abstract. So my point being is that just being whatever major you happen to be, it doesn't tell you what your career path is. But what's important and why UC is so valuable to the world is that it besides just training people, it anchors research to a huge degree because top universities are research universities. Now, I went to school in Finland, and in Finland, anyone can go to university for free. And it's the happiest country in the world. Its income inequality is a fraction of the United States. In fact, if you take a list of the countries with income inequality, the United States is 135. There's 134 countries with less income inequality than the United States, where we have a very expensive university education system. And if you look at the countries that are in the top with the least income inequality, you're going to find out that they're countries like Denmark, Sweden, Finland, and all the countries that provide. So I don't think there's any evidence that it makes for more inequality. it allows people of any income level to be able to raise their boat. And even if they don't complete it, they make connections and learn things that are going to wind up being valuable in their whole lives. So university education needs to be available for every person in the country for its health.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Education Minister. We have our observer for today's debate. He will be debate analyst for us, Professor Dr. Talib Rafael. After the debate, he will give his feedback. We have our another member, from the opposition side. Actually, now he is a climate change activist. Beside politics, he work as an activist. A lot of countries he is working and he is trying to make a positive impact. But hopefully, the education things he will give us some good analysis and he can give us a good guidelines for the around the world. And beside that, Honorable Prime Minister and opposition leaders, we have audience from around the world. We have audience from Malaysia, Brazil, USA, and everywhere. Hundred of groups. They have millions of audience. They already accept our debate. They are observing and they have lot of point of informations. If Honorable Prime Minister and opposition leaders, in your like closing remarks, if you give the response of the point of informations, hopefully our audience will be very happy. So now I request our politician and climate change activist, Professor Marshall.
Thank you, Sharif, and thank you, fellow parliamentarians on this debate. I'm honored to be a part of the debate. As my esteemed leader, David Smith, has pointed out, there are many issues with free education. One of the things that I would like to focus on is that a lot of both the Honorable Donald spoke about the UC Berkeley in the United States and how it's ranked number 5 underneath Harvard, which, by the way, is not a free university. And Harvard and Wharton are ranked way above UC Berkeley. And I know UC Berkeley. My wife attended UC Berkeley. So I think the debate is very involved. I don't think it's a clear-cut analysis as one might like to have in a debate. One of our viewers says that in Brazil they have a public and free educational system, and they need that. I think it's dependent upon which country situation you have. Not all countries are the same. Certainly, Scandinavian countries or countries like Denmark or Finland are much wealthier countries than countries in Africa or in India or in other parts of the world. And I think the issue becomes that it's got to be addressed on a country by country basis. One of the things that I'd like to bring up are some of the attributes. The government side has come and honestly said, look, we need to support free education. And they've told us that that's true. The issue is there's several issues with free education, no matter where you are on the planet. And that is, where does the money come from? It has to come from somewhere. Somebody's got to pay for it. So if you're saying that the education is going to be free, I don't believe that the professors and the student adjuncts and all the other administrators of a college or a university are going to work for free. They're not working for free. They have to get paid. So who's paying their salaries? And who's paying for the land and for the development and the buildings of all these things? Somebody's paying for it. In democracies, it's generally paid for by taxpayers. In countries that are quasi-democracies, who knows where the money's coming from? In countries that are dictatorships, they're not paying for it. So it's kind of a crazy mixture of who's paying. And I think that's a big part of the debate. And obviously, taxpayers in the United States are not eager to pay for free education. Otherwise, it would have been that way quite some time ago. Now, it's interesting that during the time of Abraham Lincoln, the president who was the president during the Civil War in the United States, he advocated free education for lower education. But for higher education, he advocated for people to earn their way through, and that's what he did. By the way, he became a lawyer. But then being a lawyer was different than today. Lawyer is a secondary degree, not a primary degree like a bachelor or a bachelor of science, bachelor of arts. So the issue becomes, where does the money come from? Who's paying for it? And the second question that my esteemed colleague and my leader, David Smith, brought up is college as important as it might seem? I've seen in countries such as in parts of like the UAE and in Israel and places like that, believe it or not, the public school education is not as important as the technical education when we're talking about higher level. So there are technical schools, technical colleges in which the students have to pay their way through, but they get what we would call practical learning, skills that are applied. I mean, we do need plumbers, we do need electricians, but those are not the only people that we need. In today's world, we have a developing crisis on our hands with the climate crisis. And we need technicians that understand systems like pyrolysis and gasification and other technologies, how to operate them, how to manufacture them, how to be manufacturing engineers. Most of this, and even in Italy and Europe, the manufacturing engineers, they're not getting a free education. They're paying for their education. So I think there's a lot to be said that both sides of the argument have to be looked at country by country, and who has the value system that can bring to the table a free education if that's what is desired by the public. In our country, I believe our esteemed Prime Minister makes a good argument for a free education, but I don't believe that the population is behind him. We are a developing nation. We are not we're not the United States. We are not Europe. We are a developing nation that has to find the wherewithal to pay for this. And we also need to maybe focus more on technical skills as well as the arts. And the final question that my colleague David Smith brought up is, would more people go to college if it was for free? And he has cited data and statistics that show that's not necessarily the case. In fact, I've had a business here in the United States where we used interns from Poland, Denmark, and other places. And who pays for that education depends on where you come from. So I think it's a sophisticated question that demands a more insightful answer than just saying, yes, let's give them free education. And so the question is, if colleges and institutions, higher institutions, should be free, what about the private institutions? What should they do? Should we just turn them out and let everybody attend them? I don't think that works very well in terms of quality of education. So the question is, there's trade-offs in life. If you get something for free, as my grandmother taught me, for free, take, but it's probably not worth anything, because free is free. But if you pay for something, there's value in it. And how you value that may be more of an issue, and how you pay for it may be more of an issue than stating that we just give out something for free. There you have it from my perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Marshalls, for your excellent analysis. We have our analyst. After the closing remarks, we will give chance Professor Dr. Talib Rafai. And I'm very happy, like even it's a mock parliament, it's create impact in US Parliament. Senator Sheikh Rahman, he said we are in legislative session, but he is observing. I believe that US senators also observing today's session, and we have our real politicians, Professor Dr. Talib Rafai. Definitely he can guide our mock parliaments. Now I want to go for the closing remarks. First, I want to give chance from the opposition side, the opposition leader, Professor David Smith.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for letting me have some closing remarks. As I've looked at the comments that have come over as we've had this debate, One of them has been, do you think the quality of education can fall due to cost-free education? As I look around the global world, the answer to that's yes. We've seen that happen time and time where education is free, both with the quality of instruction, the diversity of the institutions, and what a degree is worth. And that's a very important consideration too. You also see places where, uh, like in Brazil, we have a public and quality universities. There's no way to charge for the service. It will only increase inequality, increasingly distance equality. I can tell you, I've seen that. I've been fortunate to lecture at universities in Brazil, in Thailand, in Europe, in Germany, and uh, all over the world, across the United States. I can tell you when I go into some of the universities, which are the low cost universities, and look at the quality of the instruction, the quality of the students, they do not compare to others. And you see, what we are doing as we look at this is we're changing the landscape of what we have there as university education, and we'll see that. You know, already in higher education, there's a politics of higher education, and we see that uh, throughout. In the last primaries in the United States, you had one of the leading candidates on the Democratic side say that all colleges and university education should be tuition free, whether it is a public university or a private university. Well, that changes to me the dynamics dramatically. And the education will be paid by enforcing extra taxes on all financial transactions and things, and would just make a level playing field. Well, it's going to be hard to compete globally with a level playing field with that. There's also an issue that we see with graduate students. If I have free colleges and universities, uh, how many PhDs are we going to have? Are we going to have a lot of PhDs? Are we going to have a lot of masters that might not have the diligence and the quality we have? And today there's already plenty of help available. There's many places where, as the education minister mentioned, places like Stanford and others, where there's a lot of scholarships, where a lot of places are put in place for people who want to attend colleges. A lot of help. But the other argument that I really see too is making public higher education free would actually limit the choices for students who have preferred colleges or universities. You know, I believe that my constituents understand you have to work hard, and working harder lets you have better lives down the road. They would just take part of this away. And, even though we are in the government, if we made all of education free, it's more government control. And as we've seen over the last multiple presidents in the United States, politics gets into the education very big. And if all institutions are free, uh, there is tremendous government control. With students and their family paying for their own tuition, government's hand is in these situations are much less strong. And programs can be tailored to individual students, classes, countries, states, anything that can make the education experience more fulfilling for them. You have negative effects from the public. But yeah, I think it comes down is not everyone wants to go to college, nor do I think in today's time they need to. We go back and look at the observations we have from around the world. Even in the high tech community, increasingly we're seeing companies like Google, Intel, Microsoft, my companies, and others come to the realization that many of our best technical people do not need a college degree. And we're seeing that reflected in our hiring. I mean, the quote I read from the executive vice president for Google for human capital, human resources, saying that they increasingly are hiring people without college degrees. And that if you look at the success in Google of their technical employees, it is not dependent on the college degree. And I believe that carries on where we are. As was said earlier, we're trying to develop our technical skills, our science skills, and others. And increasingly, going to a free college or university will not contribute to that. And it's just a far greater tax upon our constituencies than we have today. And free colleges and free universities do not end inequality, they promote more inequality. So, Prime Minister, thank you for the opportunity for these final comments.
Thank you, Honorable Opposition Leader of the Parliament. Now I request Professor Rob. He is the Prime Minister for today's Parliament. Professor Rob.
Well, the loyal opposition seems to assume that what I'm proposing is an incompetent process that will give people opportunities that will misuse those opportunities to take advantage of the state. Maybe that would happen within his party, but that's not what I'm proposing here. What I'm proposing here is a partnership between industry and the state in order to create a better world for all of us. The model I'm using is the one of that's used by, or at least was created by Cisco, called the Networking Academy, where people learn and work at the same time. They learn the skills that we need them to learn. At any given point in time, they can exit the process and they've got a workable background that could get them a real job in the areas in which we need them. I would agree wholeheartedly, taking something like Harvard and relocating it into our country and then making it free would not end well. We don't need Harvard. We don't need Oxford. What we need is a bunch of well-trained citizens that can help our country move against the frontier of tomorrow. And we currently don't have them. And we don't have the industries here to support them. So what I'm proposing is a partnership between the government and industry to create the people that we need to develop the country for tomorrow, so that our country can participate in the fourth industrial revolution just as well, or nearly as well, as our peer countries in this hemisphere. He argued that he hires programmers out of boot camps. That's fine. Part of the system would be exactly that. Would be boot camps. Get people to work fast. Folks that are hurting, that have economic problems that need to be addressed now may not carry through for 2, 4, 6 years. They might carry through for 9 months and need a job and get to work. But once again, both the education and the job have to be created together. He argued that GPAs are worthless. Well, maybe his GPA was worthless, but my GPA got me my first job and my second and my third. What a GPA and a certificate or a degree provides is the ability to move between companies. We don't want to create a bunch of slaves. If you don't have a degree or a certificate, it's very hard to leave your company and work for somebody else. We need to create a competitive workforce where the workforce can defend themselves and against mistreatment, where the environment is healthy and helpful, and where if they find themselves in a bad situation, they can get a job someplace else much more easily. Basic college degrees actually help, if they're in the right areas, help the industries of tomorrow. But I would agree that low-income students can't afford to be out of work, and going full-time in college would mean we would have to fund their living expenses. But fortunately, what I'm arguing here is a combined program where they have, much like the Networking Academy, where they're both working and learning at the same time, where they can apply the skills they're developing as they're developing. One of the big problems with education, whether you look at the legal community or the medical community or the scientific community, is very often they're not really taught what they need to do when they actually get their first job. They have concepts, they've got theories, and at least in the medical community, we do force them to work in hospitals as they develop their capabilities. So when they come out and they're done and they get their doctorate, that they can actually practice medicine and they know what they're doing. If we did that, much like some of the educational institutions, using Harvard for an example, they would come out with a lot of theory but have no idea how to apply it. We need people to hit the ground running. We are behind. The opposition referenced Germany. Let's be very clear. We are not Germany. We would like to be Germany, but the only way we can be Germany is we bring up our population and make them capable of competing, not in the world of today, we're kind of late to that, but in the world of tomorrow. He argued that free college doesn't assure completion rates. Absolutely. Free college would not assure completion rates, which is why I'm proposing that the areas that we fund are not only areas that the state needs funding, but where they learn on the job as they're learning the theory behind the skill. That way, they're much more likely to exit the process and want to get the job they've been trained for. A lot of the reason that people stay in college for long periods of time and don't want to exit is because they're afraid of what they don't know. They don't know the job. They don't want to take the risk. College is safe. We don't want to make college a place that's safe and they stay forever. We want to make college a stepping stone on the path to their and our success. Now, I should point out that the Minister of Education made a couple statements that I want to clarify. He argued that Steve Jobs only had a calligraphy major in college. He also dropped out of college and he went to India and he studied how religious leaders manipulate large populations. That was the skill he used to create Apple, and it was the skill he used in excess when he turned Apple into one of the largest, most powerful companies in the world. He learned by watching other people do what he needed to learn. He already was a class 17 manipulator. That education took him to a class 20 and made him almost unstoppable. He talked about Elon Musk's economics major, but Elon Musk started off as one of the founders for PayPal. And economics was critical to his job as CFO of PayPal. And then he was able to use those economics to develop massive wealth and a number of industries. Economics is important. It actually is a broad skill, and while it's theoretical, when you use it properly, it puts you in a position to develop industries. I'm not saying we shouldn't have economists. Finally, as we look at this underlying process, the goal here isn't just to take an education institution and make it free. The goal is to create a new kind of education institution modeled after the Cisco Networking Academy that's a partnership between industry and government to help create our baseline of people that will help build our world of tomorrow, make us competitive in this fourth economic and industrial revolution, and make sure we are not overcome and bypassed by our peers, by other companies, and remain relevant in not only now, but into the future. Our people are our most important asset. We need to make them our most powerful fuel for building for tomorrow.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for your excellent closing remarks. We have our debate analyst, Honorable Professor Dr. Talib Rafael. So, Dr. Talib.
Thank you so much. It's a very important topic we're talking about here. I believe that people have three obligations that the government must do. One is obligation to provide public health. Second is to provide public transportation, and third is to provide education. So education must be free. I completely align myself with that. I think that freedom of education is an important element in freedom altogether. And I think that, contrary to what was said, there are no universities, private universities, that can cover all the cost of everybody. Only very, very, very limited scholarships are given in private universities. Education must not be a trade or a commercial issue. Education is something much more noble than that. People get educated because they want to go to jobs. And our education must be geared towards that. So I'm for free education. I'm for education that's responsible, because that's how the developing world needs to get through. There are many, many professors also from the developing world that go and work in the developed world today. I think they should stay in their countries and contribute to what they have to offer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Talib. This is really important. This is really important discussion, the really important dialogue. Both of the team actually bring very, very important point, which is relevant for discussions. Yes, education is free. I can remember my father get 100% free education. On the other hand, yes, I have to pay a lot of money for education. So this is the different world, different strategy and different things, but yes, definitely what actually Professor Rob actually bring the point from Cisco Academy. This is also interesting point. On the other hand, Professor David Smith bring different logical things. Professor Donald and Mr. Marshall also bring very strong point. But one thing that I believe strongly, I believe even World Talent Economy Forum, we have our initiative, School of Talent Economy. In this COVID-19 situation, our initiative is very small because there is a huge populations from the developing world. They need educational support. They need job because many people lose their job. Even I know many of the people go for suicide. Lot of things actually happening. So we are trying as our major focus is economy. We are trying to create some job opportunity. We are providing training to thousands of students from Africa, from Malaysia, from India, Bangladesh, and we are creating job opportunity for thousand students in Europe and Malaysia. And side by side, we have more students because more students are joining. Example from India actually from grassroots level, which is our target, around more than 3,000 students. They will join in School of Talent Economy, and we need to support them. We do not know. Some point we do not know what will be the solutions. But when any offer we get, definitely right the way we take this opportunity. Hopefully, we can run these projects. In March, we have a very good sessions with India Rotary clubs and the water ministries, and we will train 3,220 students in India. And any our speakers, our audience want to support our project, you can, because education is very, very important. What Dr. Talib said, must need to be like create some opportunity for our youth. And especially this time, I can remember that only in South Asia, it's a uh, billions and billion dollars like business go downs because of this COVID, and many people has many economical challenges. But if we can give them proper training, proper support, and proper job opportunity, maybe we can overcome from these economical challenges. So as our challenge main focus is economy, so I request everyone, please support World Talent Economy Forum initiative. Maybe by this way we can save many peoples around the developing world. So thank you, Professor Rob, Professor David Smith, Professor Marshall, Professor Donald, Professor Talib, for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum. And I really like all of our audience, those who continuously support us. And I'm sure our speakers will be very happy. I think more than 100 of groups, many universities, many even cultural organization, debate club, many startup community, they actually welcoming World Talent Economy Forum. Regularly we are sharing our content, 100 of groups, and many people we never meet with them, but they come as an audience. So I want to give thanks to all of our social media group. I believe they have more than millions of people, and Mr. Marshall also helping us to get some audience. So I request all of our speakers, all of you actually, all of you are a social media influential. So you can share our content, as well as hopefully with your support, we can rebuild this new world. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.